Good evening, fellow Toastmasters and guests. Good evening. All right. Okay, so today's session, which I'm conducting, is on speech writing. Okay, please come in. Yeah. All right. So now the speech writing, and of course the content writing in any speech is vital for any communication. Now, how many of you know this rule of 55, 38, and 7? Or have you heard about 55, 38, 7? All right, first let me explain you what is 55, 38, 7 all about. Now, a research has essentially shown that whenever anyone comes on the stage, 55% of the effect comes through vocal variety. That is, what you actually hear, is the body language. 55% is the body language. That is how your body gestures really work. That's what really counts, 55%. Believe it or not, 55, that's a huge amount. And after that, the rest 38% is on your voice tonality. How effective is your voice, or how does your voice resonate towards the audience? And the balance 7%, or meager 7%, is the content. So today, we are just working on 7%. You might say that, why is 7% so important? Don't you think that 55%, when it holds the most effect, that is what I should be training you on? Or 38% is what I should be focusing on? But why 7%? Okay, now the reason for which 7% is being stressed upon, or I'm focusing on 7%, is because once you master 7%, the rest of the things are easy for you to master. Right? As it is said, that content is king. But, however, the engagement is the queen. The content is king, but the engagement is queen. And, believe it or not, the lady always rules the house. Well, all the married men will definitely vouch for it. I don't know about others. So friends, it's very important for you to improve or to have a proper drafting of the content, because once you have the content ready, or a proper content ready, that makes the huge impact on the rest of the things. Okay, so these are three major elements of a communication protocol, which everyone should know, every speaker should know, because that's where the foundation begins. Okay, now I hope today that all of you are comfortable in English and Hindi, also a little bit of Hindi and everything. I hope we can all understand Hindi. So please, first of all, as a ground rule, feel free to ask me questions. At any time, at any point, you feel that you're getting stuck up, I encourage questions. Of course, if there are going to be too many questions, I will encourage you to ask me towards the end of the meeting. But if there's any specific point you're getting stuck up on, feel free to disturb me. I won't feel bad. All right. So let's begin the session. Now, the first thing is, what exactly happens? Please come in. Yeah. So what exactly happens, or how do you exactly go about drafting a speech? What are the first things which we should do when you want to draft any speech? Any feedback? I want to make it interactive. Feel free to ask me. Feel free to answer. Yeah.
Perhaps making a mind map of
True.
speech. What specific areas you could cover, and if there is a humor element, how should we inculcate?
How should we present it? Right.
So that the audience is engaged as well, and you focus on what is the audience getting out of your speech.
Very true. Wonderful. Anything else? Please go on.
Title. Title. Because
Title.
you decide on the title, then you work on deciding on the
All right. Wonderful. Okay. Now, the first thing is, that's also a valid point. Now, the first thing is, you must know what is the purpose of your speech. So, for that, there's a speech planning template, which I've already shared in our JTC group right now. So, have a template, and in the template, find out what is the purpose of your speech. Now, again, the purpose itself is a very vast thing. So, I'll come to the specifics of what is the purpose. So the main thing is, when you're writing a speech or drafting a speech, how exactly do you find out the purpose, or what is the purpose? Now, there are two types of purposes of any speech. One is the general purpose, and the second is the specific purpose. It's also there in our pathways. For all the people, who are Toastmasters, and they will deliver a few speech, you will come to know that what is a general purpose and a specific purpose. But believe it or not, most of us tend to make mistakes only over here, only in the first steps, because we really do not go through the purpose. So define the purpose of your speech. All right, so once the purpose is clear, then after that, it becomes easy for you to draft. Okay, so first of all, let's come to the general purpose, then we'll dig into more detailed specific purpose. Right, now there are 4 types of speeches, essentially mainly 4 types of speeches by which you can classify your speech. Does anyone know those 4 types of speeches? It's there in our icebreaker come on, it's very simple, it's very basic. You ought to know this.
Informational, persuasive,
right. Okay, there's that. Okay, yeah. Right, wonderful. Okay, so essentially it is four major types. PIIE is the acronym for it. P is persuasive. So now I will start with the persuasive speech. What are the elements of a persuasive speech? When you are defining a type of speech, does it fall into persuasive? Does it fall into informational? Does it fall into inspirational? Or the last is entertaining speech. So let's define each of these 4 purposes, the general purpose. So let's say if it's a persuasive speech, what is an element of persuasive speech? How do you define a persuasive speech? Or can anyone give an example? I'll just give a very brief example. जैसे कि कोई भी भाषण होता है, जैसे नेताओं का भाषण होता है. That's a typical persuasive speech. They want you to vote for them, no matter what. All right. So in a persuasive speech, there is a call for action. All right. So when you have a call for action, it's going to be a persuasive speech. For example, in today's workshop, I want you to follow a particular rule set for drafting and defining a speech. So, and of course, I need to get an agreement from the audience as well. So once the audience agrees to my viewpoint, it becomes a persuasive speech. Okay. Are there any questions for persuasive speech? Anyone who is not able to understand the persuasive speech, please let me know. Okay, because persuasive speech is a very important speech because this is where the whole magic appears. Because when a speaker tries to put his viewpoint or tries to convince his viewpoint to the audience, कि नहीं ये ऐसा ही होना चाहिए, and this is what should happen, and this is right and that is wrong, and these ideas are right, that is all persuasive speeches. And there's generally an agreement generally. A marketing speech may be persuasive, or it may also fall under informational because you're providing an information of a product. So marketing may be under both of them. But if you want to sell that product, of course, it's persuasive. कोई भी आपका product है and you want to sell it off. All right. So this is persuasive. The second type of speech is informative. So informative speech is passing on simple information from me to you. So there's certain information I know, और मैं आपको information दे रहा हूँ. The third type of speech is okay. One more thing. I'm just going back. In the informative speeches, it is a structured speech. It is a structured speech in which I'll be providing an information in a structured manner. That is point 1, point 2, point 3, and the summation. That is informative. The third is inspirational speech. This is a very important type of speech. An inspirational speech or a motivational speech. What are the ingredients of this speech? Any idea inspirational speech क्या होती है?
You can come up with a personal experience also, so that it is relatable to the audience. You can connect with the audience.
Right. Yep.
A path or a journey to a better place. A path or a journey to a better place. A delivering of a message to the audience while
Okay.
It is its purpose is to infuse positivism.
Right. Wonderful.
In the listener. Some people just think they don't know it.
Right. Yeah.
Just
Okay.
to spark that fire within motivate your speakers,
Yeah.
your audience.
Wonderful. Okay. So all of your are mainly right. Now, an inspirational speech is again a very creative speech because it is a special kind of persuasive speech. It is a persuasive speech where you share your experience and you move the audience. That is, you inspire the audience to take up your idea or your message. All right. So ideally, I'm not saying always. Ideally, an inspirational speech has your own story or maybe a story of any hero or anyone whom the audience can relate to. So in an inspirational speech, one of the most important part is the connection to the audience. You must be able to connect to the audience. You must be able to express your feelings to the audience. Once you're able to express it, you can move the audience. All right. So inspirational. Most of the in our Toastmasters, most of the contest speeches are inspirational by nature. Most of them. I'm not saying all, but most of the speeches are inspirational by nature because you share your journey, you share your ideas, you share your story. This is what happened to me. This is what I was. This is what I became, and this is the story. All right. Now of course, probably I'll be going a little bit into detail of inspirational speeches because this is what I would encourage you to take it on because this is what really Toastmasters is all about inspiring others with your speeches. Now, one more question. What is the difference between inspiration and motivation? In motivate के अंदर भी you ultimately move the audience or I mean you give some ज्ञान to the audience. Similarly, in inspiration, you do the similar thing. So how are these two things different, inspiration and motivation?
Perhaps motivation can be somewhat vague, like you said, that inspiration is mainly connecting with the audience one-to-one, perhaps by sharing an intimate experience with something. Motivation can be you have to get up in the morning. Sure, but are you providing any personal detail, are you not? So it kind of falls back in terms of connective aspect, but I'd say for me at least that's one clear distinction.
All right. Okay, good.
Inner motivation actually is an inspiration, where you can get the motivation from other people. You don't get inspiration from other people.
All right. Okay. See, essentially, in motivation, motivation is something like a carrot and a stick rule. That is, in motivation, in a motivational speech, that is like, for example, a company is giving a motivational speech to motivate their company or their employees to take up a particular target, a sales target, so that they may get the bonus. So there's an element of carrot and stick. That is, I mean, if you can do this and if this is what you can do, this is what you can achieve and this is what you will get. That is a typical motivational speech. Whereas an inspirational speech is something in which you transform a person from A to B through some healthy examples. All right. So a lot of times these two things are confused together. So I thought I should just clarify it. What is the difference between motivation and inspiration? All right. So in inspirational speech, generally what happens is that, let's say for example, I was A and I became B as on today. So I cannot be the hero of my story. There must have been some external source who must have moved me and motivated me or inspired me so that I became B, from A to B. All right. So please remember that in inspirational speech, you cannot be the hero of your own story. All right. And the last and the most important, again, a very important speech is the entertaining speech. What are the entertaining speeches? Entertaining speeches, by the name only, it sounds entertaining. Generally, entertaining speeches are given for basically any public occasion, special occasion speeches, or, for example, any after-dinner speeches by any dignitaries. So these are all entertaining speeches or humorous speeches. All right. So it must tickle the funny bones in the audience. So that is a typical entertaining speech. Yeah. Storytelling can be in all of them. Storytelling can be in persuasive, in inspirational, informative, and all these.
Stand-up comedy.
Stand-up comedy. These are all inspirational speeches. Now let me ask you one story. One thing, that what is the difference between a story and a speech? एक कहानी और भाषण के बीच में क्या फर्क होता है? Right.
Story can be written as well, while the speech will have to be delivered someday.
No, it's the same thing. A speech also has to be written and delivered. Yeah.
A speech will have a key takeaway for the audience. A story may not have.
Why? A story has got a moral. The moral of the story. इस कहानी का सार ये है.
Story have characters, but speech. Story have characters. Like people get interacted with each other. So yeah, an example is given while presenting some people in it. Then there is a story.
All right.
There is no anyone playing any role play is not there. Then there is no story.
All right.
Story may be the sequence of events, or speech is sequence of opinion or something.
All right. Okay.
In speech, you try to interact, ask questions to the audience, but in the story, you just
Partly. Yeah. That's also one of the difference. A good one. Yes, anything?
Story is engaging and the speech is interactive.
Okay.
Story can be in several forms, like in written or you're giving in vocal way. Speech, just presenting it. Presenting it in a vocal sense.
All right. Okay. Now, here.
Speech has some rhetorical questions to encourage the participation of the audience.
Right here. Come.
But the story is written or told by the way.
Wonderful. Yeah. Okay. A lot of points are correct. No, so a speech can be interactive with the audience, and the key thing is that a speech is structured. Now, it doesn't mean that a story is not structured. A speech is structured in the form of three places: opening, the body, and the conclusion. Whereas in case of stories, a story has got a particular sequence of events which have taken place, and it ends with the moral of the story. Is kahani ka saar ye hai. All right. Now again, to get more into the detail of this, a speech may have different stories in it. A collection of stories, a collection of 2 or 3 different stories, your own personal story or any other stories, and it can be constructed into a speech, into a proper speech. Whereas a story is just a single story. And in stories, there are 5 different elements which describe a story. First of all is place, person, plot, problem, and the conclusion. All right? Place, person, plot, problem, and conclusion. Generally, there may be sub-points of all these. That's another thing. So essentially, these are 5 major elements which really make up stories. All right? But as I mentioned before, in a speech, you've got 3 different elements: an opening, a body, and a conclusion. And that is because in case of speech, let's say, for example, I'm giving a speech to all the audience today. So why do you need to really construct all this? Why do you need all these 3 sequences? Because in the opening, you tell the audience what you're going to tell them. All right. So that's what the opening is all about. The introduction is all about the opening. Then the second part, I'll be coming into more detail about this. Don't worry. And then the second part is the body. That is the main event. And the last part is the conclusion on how you conclude your particular speech. Okay. Now the thing is, like basically, whenever I told you about the general objectives, then the second thing is you need to know who your audience is. For example, in today's session, the first thing before even drafting my workshop was I tried to find out who my audience is. What is the age group of the audience, who they are, what is their level. So essentially, there are 2 things. First of all, you must have a passion for the subject whenever you're delivering any speech. Passion for the subject and compassion for the audience. So when you have passion for the subject and compassion for the audience, you're able to know, you're able to visualize what you're going to deliver. And essentially, there are 5 important things for which you need to know the audience and what you really want to do. We're not, abhi tak apne speech writing shuru hi nahi kari. I'm just trying to get into before pre-speech writing. That is what your speech is about and what do you want the audience to feel today. For example, aaj meri workshop se, what is the audience going to feel? Are they going to feel a sense of satisfaction, a sense of enthusiasm that they can draft a speech and they can deliver a speech? What do you want them to feel? So there's an acronym, a beautiful acronym by the name of FUNDA. So FUNDA ke 5 formats hote hain, 5 elements. The first is feel, F. Then the second is unveil. What do you want to tell the audience? After your audience, you made them feel great. What do you want to really unveil to the audience? What do you want to tell them something different? What do you want the audience to notice about you, about your speech? That is N. And then comes do. What do you want them to take up? What is the call for action? Do is always do, and the last 2 parts are the call for action, do and A. So basically, in a speech and story, these are 2, again, one more difference. In a speech, you have got a call for action. In a story, there is only a moral of the story. Is kahani ka saar ye hai. Right? So where you've got a call for action, that is a speech. Okay, is everything clear till now? Please, if anything is not clear, please let me know. Feel free to interrupt me. Okay, now essentially, again, I'm not come to the speech part. Before that, what is the type of audience whom you're going to meet? So essentially, again, in the audience, there can be 3 or 4 different types of audiences. The first type of audience is, they can be a hostile audience. Like when you're giving a speech under fire, कई बार corporates के अंदर like you need to give a speech in which the whole audience is against you. Let's say a particular massacre has taken place, and the CTO or the CEO or CFO has to present the report at the board meeting. So at that time there's a huge hostility amongst the audience. So how do you address those types of meetings? So is your audience hostile? So if you've got a hostile audience, how will you really approach them? At that time, you need to get your facts and figures very clear. You need to present them on what is your disaster recovery plan and present it to them in an amicable manner, because you can't be hostile to an hostile audience, because that will create a huge scene over there. Then the second type of audience are uninformed. The audience is totally uninformed and they want to learn from you, and essentially there is some information gaps which you really want to clear off. So that's the second type of audience, uninformed. Third type are critical audience. That is, a lot of times, there are a lot of speeches which are given where the audience is quite critical to take up a new action. So how do you really want to persuade them to take up that new ideas? So generally, in case of persuasive speeches, a lot of times you tend to meet a critical audience. And the last type of audience are the sympathetic audience. The sympathetic audience is that is you're expressing some views or some news in which the audience is sympathetic and they want to basically get something out of you. So essentially, for these type of audience, generally storytelling works for them, for sympathetic audience. So these are 4 types of audiences generally which you tend to meet. For example, while I was researching for today's audience, so I thought that they're going to be sympathetic. I don't think they're going to be critical. So it doesn't matter. All right. Now I'd just like to pass on this sheet to all of you. I've just got 3 copies of it, so just keep on passing it on, and just one on that side, and I'll just go through it in a very brief manner. First of all, like whenever you're drafting any speech, always have a speech planning template. These templates there are a lot of different types of templates which are there available on internet for free, but this is the one I generally use. It's been designed by one of my close friend, Manoj Vasudevan from Singapore. So he always uses it, and so do I. Generally, I won't say all the time, but most of the time I tend to use a speech planning template whenever I draft and whenever I want to deliver a speech. So as I mentioned to you, the first thing, know your funders, who your target audiences are, and then come up to the structure. What do you want to, that is the opening, body, and the summation, the closing. So the first thing is the beginning. How do you begin your speech? All right, so we'll be coming to the beginning part. The opening. Now, in the opening part, it is very important for you to connect with the audience, to give some wow factor that why the audience should listen to you. Just imagine if I'm doing an opening of a particular speech and I'm not enthusiastic myself, or I'm not past the message that कि मैं आगे जाके क्या what the speech is all about. The audience themselves are going to get confused and they won't be able to really connect with you. So the first part is the beginning. Tell the audience what you're going to tell them. That is the opening part of the speech. And how do you really do that? First of all, gain audience's interest and attention. Some of the ways to do that is, can anyone tell me, give any example? A lot of you have written drafted speeches. So how do you really gain the interest of any audience? Yeah.
Voice modulation.
Ask questions, right?
Voice modulation.
Right. Okay.
If we are focusing on any kind of expression of the feeling or thoughts of people with their nature.
Okay. Anything else?
Presenting any anecdote.
Anecdotes, right?
At the very beginning of the speech.
True. Yes.
Start with the hook. It can be an idea, it can be a question. Then makes the audience think on what are you going to present.
All right. Good. Yes. Yep. Please. Humorous. All right.
You can begin with a catchy phrase.
Catchy phrase. Wonderful. Most of the points are correct. See, it's very important to always hook the audience either by asking questions or by presenting something which the audience gets hooked up. Just an example. I'll just give a very small example. For example, like I asked you, that is, why am I working on 7%? Why am I not working on 55% and 38% when they are more relevant? So again, the audience, they got hooked. Why is 7% so important? Why not work on 55%? So there can be different ways. by which you can really work on them. And of course, it's always important to have some catchy phrase, some catchy questions. Ask the audience certain questions. Get them engaged. Like as it is said, because have some proper words, of course. Like जैसे कहते हैं कि वे शब्द अगर महके तो लगाव करते हैं और शब्द अगर बहके तो घाव करते हैं. So always use some catchy phrases. That will always make a lot of differences. Secondly, tell them the purpose of your speech. It is very important in the opening. You need to tell what you're going to be telling them about. A lot of times, we're just asking questions in the opening, but we're not coming to the main point. What the speech is all about. So generate curiosity and interest amongst the audience of what's coming ahead for them. Establish credibility. Tell them that why you are credible as a speaker to really present this particular topic. What have you done? And provide, and of course, reasons for them to listen. That is why they should listen, and what will they get out of the 7%? Because this 7% will make a difference on the whole 93% of your speech. Okay, now exactly how do you really tell them that what you're going to be telling them next? So this process, actually it's a process generally comes in books. It is known as signposting. So signposting is a process by which you tell the audience in different manner, that is what's coming up ahead. Just hold on, because there's more interesting things coming up ahead. Right? So it can be in a single word, it can be in a sentence, it can be in a phrase, or however you want it. But signposting is important in your opening. We're just coming to the beginning part. Just an example. For example, this speech will focus on so and so. It will then go on that. That is what the speech is going to, how the speech is going to move ahead, how the session is going to move ahead. Okay, so that's a very important example of signposting. There are different ways. This speech will examine, it will focus on, it will address, analyze. Okay. Later on, once you get time, I will explain to you that is some good speeches where the opening made a lot of impact for the whole speech. Now, the main thing is that, let's say, even if you're telling a storytelling, the opening makes a very big difference, because in the opening you establish a premises. So you have to be descriptive in your opening. So, for example, let's say I'm giving a speech on, let's say, something on my house and something which happened in the balcony. So I will describe the balcony. That because the balcony is the premise of my speech. What is the premise of your speech? So उस premise के ऊपर you have to be very descriptive. Okay, we'll come to the descriptive languages later on, but the premise should be addressed in the opening. Okay, now moving ahead. Now, so first of all, general purpose is very clear. Now we're coming to the specific purpose. Because the specific purpose is something which is addressed in the body or the second part of your speech. So the specific purpose has to be very clear, otherwise it can make or break your speech, because that is the core essence of your particular speech. So let's say, for example, today I'm delivering a speech on, especially for IT professionals, they might be able to relate to it more, on why you should take up an open source software than as compared to a software which is just close-ended. Like I'll just tell you an example. What is an open source software? An open source software is something which is a freeware, which is available and which can be customized for your organization, rather than going for a branded software or a software which has been developed by one particular organization. So let's say if I really want to tell them, so that is going to be my specific purpose. Whom am I going to address? I'm going to be addressing the school administrators about the open source software. And what is the specific purpose? To address to basically encourage the college students and the administrators to take up that particular software and to explain them the benefits about that software. It is a freeware, it can be customized as per your use, and of course you can even, the total cost of ownership, TCO, is going to be negligible than as compared to going for any branded software. All right, and of course, so either it can be to inform, it can be to persuade them to take up your idea, or it can also be an entertaining, because you can also give, please come in, yeah. It can also be entertaining in the form, that is, you can tell them, what happened when a particular organization, they did not take up this open source software, they're still struggling to get customer support from the branded software. So they can also be an element of entertainment by giving us storytelling on the miseries of other people who have not taken up this particular software, the idea. So that becomes your specific purpose. Okay, are you clear between the specific purpose and general purpose? Because it's a very important concept. In specific, what happens is that when you know the general purpose of a speech, you proceed ahead to the specific purpose. And in specific purpose, you always put different points, it can be different points, or you need to brainstorm the points in order to create those points. Brainstorming, all these things comes before you're drafting a speech. You need to brainstorm, as someone was saying, that is, you need to create different mind maps. Okay, so mind mapping is done at this point of time, that is, कि ये particular software के क्या-क्या benefits हैं, and how do you really proceed ahead. Okay? Then the main points are created, and you need to describe your each and every main point ahead. Okay, now coming to this, once you have drafted a proper speech, how are you going to engage the audience? Again, this is a key takeaway from today's speech, from today's session, engaging the audience. Okay. Now, in engaging the audience, first of all, it is very important to tell a story. A personal story always works the best if you personalize a particular story. So tell a story which is credible and to which the audience can really connect to. So first of all, give a particular experience of something which the audience is looking out to hear. And especially it must be towards that particular topic. So point out something which is important for the audience and the correct setting, because an audience wants to know something which is really burning issue for them. So relate it to some burning issue and just find it out where you can do it. Okay, ask some provocative questions. Okay, now after this, just when the session ends, there are going to be a couple of speeches where I would like you to identify that is where these points could have been addressed. And then I will also be presenting my own script later on, where I have earmarked where I have put these points. So it will become more clear, because of course, if I'm just telling you theoretically, a lot of things do not tend to be clear. But once you present it practically, a lot of things will become clear. So please hold on. This is known as signposting. When I'm telling the audience what is coming up ahead. Okay, state the fact, state some burning issues which are really going on, and of course, and what's in it for me. Always remember that is, an audience listens to you, or they get engaged to you when you've got a factor of what's in it for me in your particular speech. So offer some anecdote, and of course, it is very important for pausing while you're delivering in your speech. So to engage to you might ask, why is pausing so important in engaging in a particular speech in order to make a speech engaging? So can anyone tell me how pausing really helps?
You want something for the audience to sort of let an idea sink into their brains, or like when you want to make a point, when you want to exaggerate some specific idea you're trying to present to the audience.
Very right. Excellent.
Exactly, when you make something complex statement, you want the audience to absorb it.
To sink in, right?
Yeah.
To sink in. Okay, so the first thing is, anytime you explain any particular point, the audience, it takes time for the audience to really sink into that particular idea. Now, later on, I'll just be giving you certain points of, when you're speaking to basically, when you are reading, or when you're speaking to write, and when you're speaking in front of audience, there's a huge difference between that. Because when you're speaking to write, or you're drafting a particular book, so at that time, a reader can again read and overread a particular phrase. But when I'm saying something to the audience, and if the audience is not able to comprehend, so probably that point might go away from them. So pausing is very important. Let the audience sink into that particular thing. And then pausing also gives you power as a speaker. And third thing is, it also reduces your nervousness. That is, when you tend to pause and you've got some nervous energy within you, believe it or not, each and every speaker, no matter how experienced they are, they do have some element of nervousness. So you tend to get over or overcome nervousness once you pause for some time. All right, so these are three major reasons I always encourage speakers to know when to pause in their speech. Okay. So is it clear right now how to engage the audience and certain elements to engage the audience? Okay. So now the last part is the conclusion. So this is the third part which is important in any speech. That is the ending. So the conclusion must say that what have you spoken in that particular speech, what the speech was all about. The opening was tell them what you tell them the message. Conclusion is tell them what you told them. That is the final conclusion. It aids in the memory of your speech, and of course, you are able to review the main points what you told them. So always, now it's very important, the opening and your conclusion, these 2 points must create the biggest impact for your audience. Because the key takeaway message is always going to go in the conclusion of your speech. So if you haven't summarized your speech well, or if you haven't summarized it properly in 1 or 2 sentences, आपका जो takeaway message है, that's going to get totally diluted from that particular speech. Okay, so the different ways to conclude. You can conclude with an agreement if it's a persuasive speech. You can conclude with a quote or something which has happened in this, or by proposing a solution, depending on the type of speech it is. So that is what the conclusion is all about. Okay, so with this, I conclude with the structure of my speech. Is there anything which you would like to ask me for the structure of the speech? Anything which is not clear about the structuring? Because after this, we'll be having a 2 minutes break, and then we'll be proceeding ahead towards how to draft a speech. Yeah.
Can you explain a little bit about the conclusion part, specifically how to conclude it very effectively? Because it's not that the last impression is everlasting.
True.
So what could be a better conclusion?
Okay. Now, one of the best ways to conclude is basically if this thing if I've learned this thing, how can you benefit by learning this thing? This is one of the way. So get the audience to really think about it, ponder about it. That is, yes. If it's an inspirational speech, if this is what I've got, if this is the way I've got inspired, ask the audience a question. Friends, if this is the way I stumbled and I recovered, do you think you could have also recovered? Okay, then pause after that, get the audience to sink into that feeling, and then leave them with a message. Leave them with an effective message or a key takeaway from your speech. Okay, so conclusion is very important, just as opening.
One more question about introduction. You said that tell them what you are going to tell them. So if someone wants to write a suspense thriller kind of speech, whether they want to create a suspense, so how in that kind of speeches we can write our introduction?
All right. Yeah. So basically, in those type of speeches where you got a twist in the end. So first of all, begin. Yeah, please come in. Sorry. Yeah, please come in. Yeah. So essentially, for those type of for a story or any speech where you have got a twist or a suspense towards the end. So in that case, in the beginning, like how you introduce yourself is that you start off with the main premises of the speech. Then in the premise, the premise gives an idea of what is coming up next. But of course, if there's something which is very dicey towards the end, so essentially you don't reveal that over there. But of course, you just tell them that this is what is happening. Like if possible, I'll try to share one of my speech which I delivered long time ago after this session, once the session is complete, so that you get a better idea of how to move ahead and how to connect with the audience. Because the connection is again the key in any speech. Connection happens when you express yourself, when you tell something from your own life, something wow, ऐसा भी होता है क्या? So once you're able to tell that, you can connect with any audience. Yeah. Okay. Are there any questions towards the structure? Please feel free to ask me, because then we'll be moving up next after this small break. Okay. So let's have a break for 2 minutes. And after that, we for 2 to 3 minutes, and we've got a bathroom over here. If anyone wants to use it, any facilities are out here. Yeah, sure.
So just one thing, that when you are taking the speeches, if you can take Suhani's speech first, it was a GTC members, and then followed by other people. So Suhani Laksha both.
Okay. So to recap, so far what we have learned is the structure of a speech and why structuring of a speech is quite important, and how do you connect to the audience. So can anyone just tell me a couple of points on connection, on how do you connect?
By giving
Storytelling?
personal speech, personal story.
Asking questions.
All right. Yeah. Engaging by engaging with the audience, and of course, it's very important to know the power of pausing in any speech, right? And of course, like जैसे कहा जाता है हिंदी में कि मैं मौन से जो कहा जा सकता है वो शब्द से नहीं, मौन से जो कहा जा सकता है वो शब्द से नहीं, और दिल से जो दिया जा सकता है वह हाथ से नहीं. So that's why the pausing itself is very important in any speech, and know when to pause and how to pause. Okay, now moving ahead. Now we're coming to the drafting part. Now in drafting, it's very important to have a vivid imageries which you need to create with the audience. These imageries is something like, painting a picture. If you're painting a picture in the mind of the audience would be able to relate to it. Okay, so this is what it was. Especially it is quite important when you're doing storytelling, right? So now how exactly is descriptive writing done? Now let me give you an example. I'm trying to describe a village. Would anyone like to read it out? Anyone? Just read out the sentence.
The tiny village, nestling by the distant stream in a pine forest, was merged in that twilight peculiar to starry spring nights. Everything was still, pensive and sad. The village quietly slumbered.
All right. So now just an example of one sentence. So in this sentence, you are describing a particular village, how this village really functioned, but just by descriptive village. The tiny village. It was a tiny, small village. The audience is able to feel, it wasn't a huge village, a tiny village, and it was nestling in the distant stream. You could see it on the distant stream in a pine forest that was merged in the twilight, peculiar to the starry spring nights. Everything was still, pensive and sad. The village quietly slumbered. That is, people over the evening, over the twilight, like people started sleeping over there, right? So you're creating imageries. So this is just an example. That is, how do you create imageries? You create imageries by the 5 senses, the senses of smell, touch, feel, all right, and of course by using figurative language. And lastly, having fun with words, like words like puns, metaphors, similes. So these are all used as descriptive languages in every speeches. So that's what I always tell everyone, that is, try to describe it. Describe your premises, describe yourself, especially in an icebreaker speech. When you describe yourself, describe them so that the audience knows what type of person you are. Using your senses. So another thing is about senses. How does it smell? What did it sound like? That is, let's say you're describing your own school. What did the school sound like? That is, in the morning, the bells were chiming, and the students, they were rushing, they were galloping onto their classes, and the teachers, they were screaming. And how did it really feel? And what did it really look like? So these are senses. So by your senses, let's say, for example, my mother, she cooked a wonderful dish for me. How did it smell like? What was the aroma of that particular dish? What did it taste like? Was it delicious? So use the sensory words. Similarly, in figurative languages, you need to use smileys, metaphors. I'll be coming to some of them later on. So smiley is like. That is, she was as sad, he was as sad as something. He was as happy as something. He was something like something. So that is similes. Then you got metaphors. Personification. Personification is when you give any human touch to any type of sentence. And hyperbole is like जब हम बढ़ा चढ़ा के कुछ बोलते हैं, अतिशयोक्ति, that is hyperbole. So use these types of things. For example, the bread is hard. Instead of saying the bread is hard, the bread is as hard as a rock. Simile. So instead of saying my heart started beating fast because I got scared, my heart leaped out of my chest. Right? You're saying the same thing, but you're expressing it in a more figurative manner. Show them, don't tell them. For example, just a very simple sentence, he walked over to the stage and they gave him the award. So the thing is, it doesn't really express. So be more expressive. That when he got the award, how did he feel? His feet just felt like they were walking in the air. As he glided towards the stage, the award like this was the dream which he could never have imagined coming true. So you're saying the same thing, you're expressing it. So when you express it more in every speech, you're creating imageries in the audience's mind. Now, these are just certain sensory words which you may use for different types of feelings. For example, for smelling, it was pungent, it was acidic, it was rancid, it was foul. Similarly, for taste, it was mouth-watering, it was tasty, it was cheesy, diluted. So these are all different types of words which you may use to describe, rather than saying it was a delicious cake. Try to say that it was a mouth-watering cake. All right, it was a spicy dish. It was very bland. Rather than saying it was horrible dish, it was a bland dish. Okay, so these are sensory words which you might consider using for sight, hearing, touch. All right. Now another important thing is, when do we use direct? First of all, what is direct and indirect speech? And when is it used, or when should we use it? I'm sounding like an English teacher today. Okay. So essentially, a direct speech is like actually when you use a quotation in any speech. For example, I just came back from the school that day, and my mother, she yelled at me, "Don't you have any sense of responsibility?" That's a direct speech. And when I expressed that, is as soon as I came home, my mom, she was as hot as an ember, and she just chided on me, and she yelled at me, and that was the transformation time of my life. Okay, so that is an indirect speech. So when exactly do we need to use a quoted speech or a reported speech? All right, so the difference is, do you want to really quote a person, or do you want to report a person? So whenever you want to do that, you tend to use either direct speech, or you tend to use an indirect speech. Of course, when you're drafting it in the direct speech, there'll always be inverted commas for what he or she said, and there will always be, there won't be any that thing, but who said it and how they said it, that's going to be in the indirect speech. Okay, now another important point, writing for eye versus writing for ear. Right, these two things are very, again, important in a speech. So the thing is, when you're writing for the ear, you got to use all these things which I told you right now, the sensory words, and of course, more than that, on how you express yourself. Now, important thing is, listeners, they do not get a second chance. The readers, they get a second chance if they have missed out on anything. So whenever you express yourself, or whenever you're writing any speech, always remember certain rules which I would be telling you right now. One of the rule, or the important rule, is try to simplify the language. Don't keep it a very complex language, something which the audience cannot really relate to. So for example, let's say yesterday I got my remuneration of, let's say, 386,000 rupees. So 386,000. So instead of saying that, just say I got a remuneration of almost 400,000. So an audience will tend to remember, rather than an exact figure, a nearby figure. Right? So that's just some ways to express out. For example, rather than saying that is, the city's budget will run into $286,726, just say nearly $300,000. An audience will tend to remember nearly $300,000 much easily rather than the exact figures. Now, write like how we talk. For example, can anyone tell me that is how this particular sentence could be improved? Yesterday, following a luncheon, the mayor delivered an address to the student's body. How can this be improved? That is, do we really talk like this? Yesterday, following the luncheon, the mayor delivered an address to the student body.
Yesterday, mayor had a conversation with all of the student organization during lunch.
A very simple way. The mayor talked to the students yesterday after lunch. So essentially, rather than having a complex sentence, simplify it and shorten it. It will also shorten the words in your speech to express it better. Now, the same thing. Can anyone tell me that is how we can improve this? My grandmother, who came to America when she was a little girl, told me yesterday that she still remembers the first time she saw the Statue of Liberty, which she said made her cry, but I'm not sure why. So always remember the rule subject, verb, and object in any sentence. That always works. Subject, verb, SVO. My grandmother came to America when she was a little girl. Okay, so you described your grandmother. Full stop. Yesterday she told me she still remembers the first time, subject, verb. She remembers the first time when she saw the object, Statue of Liberty. She said it made her cry, but I'm not sure why. Right? Subject, verb, object always works in a sequential manner. So it becomes easy for the audience to really comprehend. SVO. Again, try not to use big words. For example, Kathy declared that she really liked chocolate. Rather than declared, just keep it said. Kathy said that she likes chocolates. Or Jean attempted to purchase a new camera. So attempted to purchase, so just say he tried to buy. Attempted to purchase will again lead the audience to think what did he attempt? Why did he attempt? So try to buy. So always keep a simplified language which is always easy for comprehension. An active verb. The boy was hit by the car, or the car hit the boy, in a very simplified manner. Okay. So essentially, it's only how you articulate a particular thing. A lot of time, we tend to make mistakes. Even the best of speakers, they tend to make mistakes. But of course, we can always simplify it. Right. Now, the thing is, how do you really script it? This is how you do the simplification. Then the thing is marking up your script. Whenever you're writing down a script on how you would be articulating it, how you would be saying it, so that's one way to really mark up your script. So one way to mark up your script is highlight in bold where you have to speak loud. Highlight in soft where you have to speak softly. Okay. Now remember that is the introduction and the conclusions always have to be polished properly because people do not talk the way they write. Okay. Now the thing is, as I was telling you before, you try to use the figures of speech. Now we just try to work on some of the main figures of speeches which are generally used. An example, an analogy. An analogy is to compare something with that. That is, my heart just leapt out like something. Just an example, an absence is to love what a wind is to fire. So glove is to hand as socks are to foot or feet. Contrast, travel now, pay later. When funds are low, debts are high. Use some idioms. Idioms that is, for example, blowing your own trumpet. Okay, so rather than saying that is boasting, try to use idioms which sound like music to the ear. So once you express these, you're able to get them. Proverbs. Okay, so like Chand and Alankarik Bhasha, they always work. Metaphors like life is like a journey. Alliterations. Alliterations is like when one particular alphabet is repeated various times. Alan is articulate, accomplished. जैसे एक ही आवर्ती हो रही है इसमें. Then simile as crisp as potato chips. So these are all different figures of speeches, hyperboles which may be used. Puns. Okay, like puns like for example, friends, I've lived in Singapore for more than 20 years, and let me tell you, Singapore is a fine city. Now fine can have two meanings. That is, it's a wonderful city, and Singapore is a very strict city where you get fined for everything. So that's some ways to use or play with words. So the more you play with words, the more it becomes enriching. Oxymorons, that is something contradictory. Parting is such a sweet sorrow. There are a lot of them. I won't be going so much into details right now. For example, anaphoras, which are used. That is, I came, I saw, I conquered. A general speech by Julius Caesar. or Winston Churchill. That is, we shall go to the end, we will never surrender, we will do this, we will do that. Like that's the typical anaphoras. A very famous anaphora is I have a dream. This speech is very popular by Martin Luther King Jr. So friends, the thing is that is always give a speech, because as it is said, the worst speech is always better than the speech which you never gave. So it doesn't matter, no matter how bad or good your speech goes, because I was very frightened when I gave my first icebreaker almost 13 years ago. But of course, over a period of time, I realized that this fear, it was all superficial. Because of course, if I wouldn't have given it till now, I don't think I would have proceeded ahead. So come and deliver your speeches and use your speech template, engage the audience as I mentioned to you, and use descriptive and figurative language. And lastly, remember, people don't talk the way they write. Okay, now moving ahead from this. First of all, is everything clear out here? Does anyone want to ask anything? Because right now we'll be having certain speeches which I will show that how I've drafted it, or how I generally tend to draft a particular speech, and what I generally use in that particular speech. That is, articulation kis tarike se hota hai and how I really write it. I'm not saying that all of you should do like that, but that may help you in some ways or the other. So probably I'll just read out one speech which I had written maybe about, I think, 11 or 12 years ago, when I was in District 80, when I was based in Singapore. And you may also give me some feedback on how the speech, were you able to connect with the speech? It's an inspirational speech. And after this, I will also invite other audience members. Like a couple of them have also written this speech. So they will also be delivering their speech, and you may give your feedback. Okay, now the title of the speech is The Unusual Relationship. Okay, it's an inspirational speech. Okay, just give me 1 second, I'll just have a sip of water. Okay. Now, I had actually delivered this speech, I don't know, about maybe 3 years ago in Toastmasters. I don't know if any one of you might have heard it. And at that time, our speech used to be online during pandemic. So maybe some of you might have heard the speech. Now, a lot of times, okay, now one more thing I would like to say. A lot of times, it is generally thought of that a storytelling speech should always have a happy ending. But is it really true? No, it's not true. It doesn't matter even if it doesn't have a happy ending, or even if a speech doesn't have a happy ending. But the thing is that it should have a message. Okay, so just as a guidance to tell you that storytelling need not always be positive, or a speech need not always be positive. They might have certain things within you. Now this speech, it is titled An Unusual Relationship. So it was about a relationship which I had during my younger days with one girl. Okay. In our life, we meet a lot of people. Some of them become our close friends, and some of them end up getting estranged. Everyone will agree that there are some relations which we cannot choose in our life. And there, for example, the relationship of our parents and our siblings. But however, we can always choose those nutty friends with whom we spend the most craziest and the memorable and the most endearing times of our life. Relationships are just like a string tied in a kite. The more firm and sturdy your relationship, the more higher your kite will soar in the sky. However, the loose knots in the string, they will end up making your kite unbalanced, and your kite will end up in a muddle. Life is all about balancing yourself like that kite, along with the delicate string of relationship. How many of you have had broken relationships with your best friends? How many of you have had your close friend with whom you've broken up enter back in your life? My story is about the best friend with whom I'd broken up, and of course, what happened when she really tried to enter my life back again. My story begins when I was 19 years old. I had developed affinity with one of my dad's close friend's daughter. However, I was based in Pink City, Jaipur, whereas she was based in New Delhi. Friends, at that time, long distance relationship was quite different as compared to the relationship we have these days. During these days, we have got all the communication devices like WhatsApp, and we've got even video conferencing. Back then, it meant an expensive STD calls, or probably going from one city to other, or from other city to our city. How unfortunate I was that I didn't have Zoom and WhatsApp back then. Our birthdays, they were just 2 days apart. My birthday fell on 14th and her birthday was on 16th. But whereas we used to celebrate it on the 15th by saying, not your day, not my day, the middle day is our birthday. We used to meet regularly either in Jaipur or in New Delhi by lying to our friends and to our parents by saying, that is, I have to go for some urgent work to New Delhi. I need to study for this and I need to take some class for that. And of course, if I don't do that, my career will be doomed. But eventually, our parents, they came to know that something fishy is going on between these two people. And finally, we had to confess to our parents. Oh my God. We revealed about our relationship to our parents. However, we met with various obstacles. Her parents, they didn't want her to shift to any small city like Jaipur. And they wanted me to shift to New Delhi or some other big city. But I was adamant that my intent to move to any other city will only be if my work takes me to that particular place. Because I told them कि भाई कमाई में ही समाई होती है. Eventually, our calls and meetings were all based on migration plans. We used to end up with heated arguments. She was highly influenced by her family members. Fellow Toastmasters, when egos and intents in life, they become bigger than friendship. And when you start to trust anyone else, apart and except from your friends, then your relationship is headed towards a downfall. It will be doomed, and finally it will die. We interacted less over time, and finally our friendship broke up. I was dejected and devastated by the breakup of our long friendship. But as time heals all wounds, I finally recovered. But when the same person with whom you have lost approaches you suddenly after 3 years, you get shaken up by all the memories, the same memories which you had buried and thrown it in some sea. It starts to reappear with you like a flashback of a film. I was settled in Bombay after a couple of years, and I received a call from my dear friend. And that day was 15th. And she said, not your day, not my day. The middle day is our birthday. I said, wow, my ex-bestie, she too was settled in the same town, Mumbai, and wanted to meet me and start back the friendship and rekindle it back. Of course, our friendship had turned quite sour back then, but I couldn't say no to her because I was flooded with the old memories of when we were together. And our friendship was so intense that it made me rekindle all the old memories. So of course, traveling back to Jaipur, and of course going all the way to New Delhi and meeting her, lying to all our parents and our near and dear ones, so they all flashed back on my eye. But I had a strange query going on in my mind, that did I really want to get back to that relationship which I had given up on? And it's been 3 years, who knows, maybe even she might have passed on. But it is said that love is blind. But whereas my eyes had opened up by then, I realized that she had approached me because I was settled in Mumbai, in a metro city. So the question came up in my mind that what if today I'm settled in Mumbai, but let's say tomorrow I might have to go back to Jaipur or some other city. What is going to happen in my life back then? Because I'm going to go where my work takes me. Friends, it is said कि रिश्ते कभी आपको बांधते नहीं हैं, वो आपको आज़ाद करते हैं. और जब रिश्ते आपको बांधने लग जाए तो फिर उनसे आज़ाद होने का वक्त आ गया है. Relationships aren't there to bind you, but they are there to set you free. And when relationships, they start to bind you, it's time for you to set yourself free. We met and I told her, See, I appreciate you and you hold a very special place in my heart. But however, it is not possible for me to get back into the relationship of the old days. She was quiet and she spoke for some time and she finally left. But that moment, I felt a huge sigh of relief. I felt that a huge load which I was carrying on my back has gone away from me. I had learned to say the power of no earlier in my life because there are some people who stay in your memories as stories, as fables and tales. But however, when they really appear in front of you, they end up differently. And she was one of them. It is all right to say no in your life and to choose yourself because it is vital to stay with a person with whom you know you will be compatible. People have taught us to love others, but however, no one has taught us that is important. It is quite important for us to love ourselves first. And of course, if people say to us that you are selfish, then tell them, yes, I am, and a lot. Because those who cannot love and respect themselves, I do not know how they respect others in life. So I did not know, and I admired and others. So after 30 long years, friends, even today, we really greet each other. But these days, we greet each other on WhatsApp, and maybe sometimes we interact on Zoom. And we interact on one day after my birthday and one day before her birthday by saying, not your day, not my day, but the middle day is our birthday, and probably with a simile. Friends, in life, you have to win and lose sometimes with yourself, for yourself. Thank you. Okay, now I'll just be showing you on how I've scripted it so that you may get some idea on how a scripting is done. I hope this carries on till you. One second. One second. Okay, can you see it? Yes. All right. Okay, so essentially, like as I told you, that is, I've written the script. Sorry, here. I put the opening over here, and I've written down the main opening part. In our life, we meet a lot of people. Some of them so and so. Then where am I transitioning to? Like it cannot come on a slide because it is on a word.
You can zoom.
Okay, I'll just zoom it. Sorry. Okay. Okay. Is it legible? Here. Like, sorry about it for people who are sitting at the back. It might not be so legible. Okay, so first of all, you always write down the opening. Then. Huh? Okay. Okay, essentially, like what you're doing is that you're putting a transition, friendship to relationship. And what is the premise? The premise of this whole speech is relationship. So you're describing relationship. That what is relationship all like? So relationship is just like a string tied up to the kite. The more firm and sturdy, the more it is. Okay, then life is all about balancing yourself like that kite along with the delicate string of relationship. So you're using a figurative language of a simile. So as I mentioned over there, show but don't tell. So you're showing. Then you're asking a question. So you're connecting with the audience with a provocative question. That is, how many of you have broken up with your best friends, and how many of you have had those close friends who tried to enter back in your life? Then you come to the main part, the body. Okay, so now in the body, where would I be standing? Because today it was only on the content, so there was no body movement or much of voice modulation. But where do I need to stand? So always make it very clear in your script that that is where you really have to deliver this particular speech. So for example, I'll be on the left side of the stage. Okay, so, and as I was mentioning that any particular story has got, do you remember the 5 elements of any story?
Place, person.
Yeah, exactly. So the first thing, the story is about my best friend with whom I had broken up. So it's about the person, the place. When I was, how old I was, 19 years old. So I'm painting a picture in the audience's mind, the person. Then use the stage. Like, I mean, for example, I was in Jaipur, she was in Delhi. So move about in the stage to describe, to create holograms. Okay, it's very important to create holograms on the stage for different places. So then after that, like I'm describing the part, that is, at that time we didn't have WhatsApp or Zoom. Then the key phrase to be used. Now this is a recall. The recall in the speech was, not your day, not my day, the middle day is our birthday. Okay, so this will be a recall which will come at different places in the same speech. So that will be delivered at the center. Then comes the plot. That is, we used to meet regularly either in Jaipur or Delhi, so and so. And then comes the problem. That is, what is the problem in my story? Okay, so the problem has to be highlighted in every story. That is, plot ke baad mein kya problem aayi. That is, so eventually our calls and meetings, they were based on migration plans and what happened. We had heated arguments and she was highly influenced by her family members. So come down. Then of course, when you got any strong message which you want to pass on to the audience, make it bold. That is, when your egos and intents in life becomes bigger than friendship and you start to trust everyone apart your friend. So your relationship is going to be doomed and it will head to the downfall. Okay, so that part must be highlighted. Figurative language, it is alliteration, rule of 3, downfall, doomed and die. So okay, so this is used. So we interacted less over time. I was dejected and devastated. Alliteration again. Then, Then of course there's a metaphor. That is, I mean, like when she tried to enter in my life, how did I feel? So metaphorically, how did it really feel? Then there's again a recall, not your day, not my day, the middle day is our birthday. And then the third phase of the story begins. That is, what happened when she tried to meet me in Mumbai. So she told me that she too is settled in the same town and our friendship was so intense and so and so. And it is said that love is blind. So, and idioms are used over here. And then the rest, like I mean, what I said in Hindi and English, the relationships aren't there to bind you, but they're there to set you free. And when relationship starts to bind you, it's time to set yourself free. Then what is the resolution of the story? Okay, it's very important. Every story must have a resolution. So how did I resolve it? Now resolution doesn't mean that it needs to have a happy ending. It can even be a different ending, a twist in the story. So that's the resolution part. That is what I told her as a direct speech. Like when you want something to exactly आपने word by word आपने क्या बताया, so that's a direct speech. So then and indirectly she went away. And then what is the conclusion? The conclusion is that what is the message I want to pass on to the audience? That is, people have taught us to love others. However, no one has taught us that it is important for us to love ourselves first. All right, and then and then in life you have to sometimes win or lose for yourself with yourself. Okay, so this is the conclusion. So that's just an example of how a drafting should be done, which I wanted to share with you. So that, I mean, like whenever you draft any speech, so just take care of this fact, that is in your speech where you will be standing, which is going to be the high point of your speech, the low point of your speech, and like where are you using the figurative languages, and what is the figurative language and how you can make it more descriptive. That is, for example, the premise of my story is relationship. So what am I comparing the relationship? How am I describing the relationship? Okay, to the audience. So these are just a couple of things which I thought I should share with you. Okay, now apart from this, today we've got a couple of other speakers who will also be delivering their speeches, and like I would like you all. Okay, first of all, are there any feedbacks for my speech on how I could improve further? Yeah. Because in Toastmasters, it's very important, highly important to get feedbacks, constructive feedbacks from the audience. Of course, today there wasn't any body language because I was stationary at one place, and the objective of today's speech was only content. It wasn't really body language or vocal variety, so that was missing. I agree to that. But if there anything, so feel free to give me feedbacks. I always enjoy constructive feedbacks of any manner. Okay. Now, apart from this, we have a couple of speakers who have volunteered today to improvise on their content. So I would like all of you to participate for the speech on how they could improve the content of their speech. So first, the speakers. So All right, so Toastmaster Akshay,